It's pronounced Frankenstein.
But aren't you the grandson of the famous Dr. Victor Frankenstein, who...
Yes. We all know what he did.
Greetings and welcome to the Nerd College, where it's our mission to introduce outstanding films, shows, and anime without giving away the whole story. One of our favorite films of all time, Young Frankenstein, is a 1974 horror comedy directed by master of humor Mel Brooks and stars Gene Wilder, Madeline Kahn, Marty Feldman, Terry Garr, Peter Boyle, and the incomparable Cloris Leachman as Frau Blücher. A parody of the popular Frankenstein films of the 1930s and 40s, the movie follows Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, who goes by Fronkensteen, in an effort to distance himself from his notorious grandfather. But after inheriting his family's estate in Transylvania, he's unwittingly guided into following in their footsteps.
What? Following in his grandfather's footsteps.
In order to get the full picture, however, we need to look back further in time to the late 18th century and the birth of Romanticism. However, I'll be breaking up the information with funny clips from the movie itself, and I'll try to get through the history segment as quickly as possible, so stick with me. By the end of today's video, you'll have a solid grasp on some very cool concepts and learn how one of the most hysterical movies of all time came to be.
No, it's pronounced Frankenstein. You must be Igor.
No, it's pronounced Igor.
But they told me it was Igor.
Well, they were wrong then, weren't they?
Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, born in 1797, is best known today as the author of Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus, which she had published when she was only 20 years old, though she would continue to write prodigiously until her death in 1851. Not only would her groundbreaking debut fundamentally influence Gothic horror and literature as a whole, but it's also considered one of the earliest examples of what we would call science fiction. To be dreadfully brief, the original story centers on the gifted but reckless Victor Frankenstein, who creates a grotesque but intelligent being in his pursuit of glory, only to abandon it and then suffer the tragic consequences when his creation seeks revenge. The novel itself is a product of the Romantic era, during which time the world's most influential artists, authors, and musicians were producing works that focused on emotion, individualism, and the potential of human imagination. Among them were Francisco Goya, Frédéric Chopin, William Blake, Richard Wagner, and many others.
Would you like to have a roll in the hay? It's fun! Roll in the hay.
After its initial success as a novel, Frankenstein would receive several early adaptations, including a silent film directed by J. Searle Dawley in 1910, and the first theatrical production based on the story to reach prominence created by Peggy Webling in 1927. The big one would come along in 1931, however, when Universal Studios released a major motion picture directed by James Whale that would set the standard for much of what we consider inherent to the story today. Specifically based on Webling's play rather than the original novel, the film introduced concepts like the mad scientist, hunchbacked assistant, castle laboratory, and torch-wielding mob to the movie-going public, which of course have become staples of pop culture, and the movie's flat-topped, bolt-necked, brutish monster instantly became iconic.
A riot is an ugly thing. And I think that it is just about time that we had one!
Interestingly, exactly none of these elements appeared in the original novel, in which Dr. Frankenstein pieced together his articulate creation in the upstairs room of his university apartment. Universal's adaptation was so successful they decided to go into the monster movie business full-time, producing no less than 7 sequels in such films as Dracula, The Mummy, Werewolf of London, and The Creature from the Black Lagoon. The original movie would also greatly influence a particular boy in Brooklyn, New York, and would later inspire one of his most popular films.
Werewolf?
There. What? There, wolf. There, castle.
Mel Brooks was born Melvin James Kaminsky in 1926, and when he was only 5 years old, his brother brought him along to see Universal Studios' Frankenstein. Brooks would later say it was the scariest thing he ever saw in his life, but it obviously ended up leaving a positive impression overall. One day we might create an entire video on the man, so for today let's just say he defended his country as a combat engineer in World War II, directed 11 Hollywood films, and is one of only 21 entertainers in the world to win an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. Basically, he's a great guy who would definitely hit like and subscribe if he were enjoying a YouTube video.
Blink, 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 blinkity, blink, blink, blink.
Are you actually saying blink?
For today, let's fast forward to the production of his third film, Blazing Saddles, during which time he would befriend Madeline Kahn. Wilder actually only agreed to be in Blazing Saddles on the condition that Brooks's next film would be based on a script he'd been working on, and after the picture's release, the two of them set to work on a very unique screenplay.
What knockers!
Thank you, Doctor.
Wilder's idea was, of course, to spoof Universal's Frankenstein, to which Brooks was initially hesitant. There had already been so many sequels, Bride of, Son of, Ghost of, that he felt another one was a bad idea. But after hearing the twist that the movie would focus on a younger Frankenstein who's ashamed of his wacko family and wants nothing to do with them, he was on board. Their script would end up incorporating elements from several of the Frankenstein films and contain some slight nods to other monster movies as well. Wilder would star, but he insisted that Brooks did not appear himself, as he does in most of his movies. He simply felt that Brooks's fourth wall breaking personality wasn't right for the tone they were going for. However, his voice still made it into the film a few times.
You seem unusually upset by this discussion.
Not in the least. I find it extremely amusing, that's all.
While casting the rest of the roles, Brooks and Wilder would immediately contact Madeline Kahn after her outstanding performance in their last film. Her initial hesitation to commit forced them to audition other actresses, including Terry Garr, who greatly impressed them on the same day that Kahn finally decided to accept the part of Elizabeth. Brooks challenged Garr to come back the next day with a German accent, and that's how she landed the role of Inga in the film. The part of Igor was written with Marty Feldman in mind, who they knew from his hilarious appearances on The Dean Martin Show and on British television. Known for his prominent misaligned eyes and flawless comedic timing, Feldman's portrayal stands out among other masterful performances as one of the funniest and most endearing in the entire movie.
Didn't you used to have that on the other side?
What?
Your, Oh, never mind.
One of the most interesting yet underappreciated aspects of the film is the extreme level of detail that went into its production to make it look and sound as authentic as possible. Firstly, it was shot in black and white, which was very rare for films in the 70s and caused turmoil with the production studios. The movie also features 1930s style opening credits and scene transitions such as iris outs and fades to black, and a period appropriate score composed by John Morris. Also, in a stroke of luck for the film, Brooks was able to obtain a great deal of the original laboratory props created by Kenneth Strickfaden for the 1931 film. All of these elements working in tandem created a marvelously spooky aesthetic that allowed the bright humor to stand out even more. A great deal of credit goes to the costume and set designers and everyone who worked behind the scenes to make the film a reality.
Nice grouping.
After a humorous opening scene at Castle Frankenstein, the movie itself begins by introducing our protagonist as a brilliant surgeon giving a lecture to medical students on the anatomy of the brain and the nature of the nervous system. A fitting position for a man obsessed with proving to himself and others that he's scientifically minded, and not some kook like his grandfather. However, he finds to his dismay that his family's reputation has followed him when a student refuses to cease asking questions about his grandfather's work regarding the reanimation of dead tissue. Exasperated, he ends the lecture only to be approached by a man bearing the last will and testament of the late Baron von Frankenstein, informing him that he must travel to Transylvania and collect his inheritance. Before he leaves, we're treated to a memorable scene at the train station where we're introduced to the doctor's fiancée, Elizabeth.
Well, how can I say in a few minutes what it's taken me a lifetime to understand?
Won't you try?
All right. You've got it, mister.
After arriving in Romania, the doctor is greeted by Igor and Inga, who are to serve as his assistants and escort him to the castle. There they are met by the castle's ominous caretaker, Frau Blücher.
What's got into them?
The doctor, Inga, and Igor are all awoken by mysterious music emanating from
Behind the bookcase.
which eventually leads them to the Baron's laboratory where the fateful incident took place. There they also find his private library, which reveals the secrets of resurrection to our now less skeptical doctor. After nearly being caught in the act of gathering the necessary ingredients, the doctor sends Igor out to obtain the final and most important element, a functional and perfectly normal human brain. Surely he'll be able to handle a simple task like that without incident. From here, with all the elements in place to recreate the notorious experiment, young Frankenstein follows the majority of the major plot points from the version of the story we're all most familiar with, but twists every scene in humorous ways and scatters jokes and ridiculous situations throughout. For one thing, the townspeople are getting pretty sick of those Frankensteins up in that castle on the hill, and amusingly reference the Universal films by saying that this has all happened 5 times before. Perhaps the most well-known scene is young Frankenstein's ridiculous take on the moment when the good doctor presents his creation to the community at large.
If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits?
After its premiere on December 15, 1974, Young Frankenstein was met with near universal acclaim and made back over 30 times its budget at the box office alone. Praised for its obvious affection to its source material and incredible performances, the movie exists on countless lists of the top comedies of all time and took home 2 Academy Awards among many others, and to this day boasts a 95% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It also inspired a Broadway musical which premiered in 2007, created by Mel Brooks himself and Thomas Meehan, who also co-created The Producers. Although physical copies are widely available, the film hasn't had a regular home on streaming as of time of recording. Still, we couldn't recommend it more highly. Do yourself a favor and watch Young Frankenstein. Whether it's your first time or your 50th, I've got a hunch you're gonna enjoy it.
Igor, Frederick.
And that's all for today. After our last video on the extensive history of the Addams Family, it was nice to cover a single film and one that's near and dear to my dark little heart. If you learned something new, please make sure to check out our other videos and leave a like as it really helps our channel grow. Please subscribe so you won't miss out on our future videos, and thank you for watching. Now, off to your next class.
Blücher.